Hello and welcome everyone to 5 ways to hold meetings in Microsoft Teams, where you get to choose the right method for your meeting's purpose. Wow, sorry about the mix-up that we must have had as far as in creating this event, and that's a great illustration of one of the variables that we'll show you a little later as far as using the live event feature of Teams and maybe missing a setting when the event was created that might have caused, that I think is probably what caused that problem. So sorry about that, but thanks for joining us 15 minutes late. So one of the reasons why this session is really critical and timely is that a lot of people have seen how there's been other, in fact, Zoom meeting is a free tool, but there's been a lot of security concerns around that. Google has banned it, the state of New York has banned it, other medical facilities have banned it. There's definitely, just because of some of the security challenges with that tool. Well, Teams was built on the core of security, and as far as, in fact, that's one of the reasons why you probably couldn't get in the first event that we created for this session, so sorry about that, but it has security in mind with its core. So we're going to show you the 5 different ways, common different problems that we have with the meetings that people need to schedule and that happen in business and in interacting with internal and external participants, and then identifying the best ways to be able to address those specific meeting needs or purposes. So I'm Nate Austin. Again, sorry, that was probably my fault as far as why we weren't able to connect right at 1 o'clock or 12 o'clock Mountain Time. And Stephanie is producing the meeting behind the scenes here. So let's get started. So again, the purpose of the session is a how-to. It is really to be prescriptive about the different methods of holding Teams meetings. We're going to do a quick overview of the common types of meetings that happen in business. We'll walk through the 5 different ways to hold those meetings, and then we'll do a quick summary of saying that these are the types of meetings that fits this method the best. And there's a quick summary slide that'll help you with that. And then at the end, at 1:45 or 12:45 Mountain Time, we'll stop the presentation, but we'll open it up to Q&A and some final recommendations. And but don't wait to enter questions that you might have until then. Throughout the session, if you have questions, by all means, please enter them into the Q&A panel on the side of your screen, and we will either, Stephanie will do her best to answer those questions during the session, or we will use that for the Q&A to start the Q&A at the end of the session. So keep those coming, but let's dig right in. Before we get going, just a couple minutes real quick about Mytech. We are a small and medium business IT consulting company. We basically, over the last 20 years of being in this industry, have developed a proven IT strategy and methodology that we know can achieve proven results for our clients. And look, this is an example of what we're all going through right now, is an example of the challenges that are external to IT that we're facing with right now relative to health and working from home, finances, etc. So we're just hoping to be able to remove the IT challenges that you may be facing, so you can spend your time in those other valuable areas where you can, your highest and best use. An acronym I like to use is HABU, your highest and best use. Our goal is to make IT easy for you. Granted, that doesn't necessarily mean it makes it easy for us. It means that we strive to make it easy for you, and that's one of the reasons why we're doing these sessions, is hopefully helping you use the tools that you have available to you better, and learning how to do that and be more effective and efficient. Through the collaboration with our clients, we know that we can help our clients achieve 4 times more value and productivity from their IT investments. So learning more, ask us about that afterwards. But thank you very much for joining. Let's dig right in to common types of meetings, and I like to parenthetically note virtual, since that's where we all are right now. So there's probably other meetings or meeting types that I may have missed, but these are just some of the meetings that I've experienced. As far as if you have a one-on-one meeting with the person, I've oftentimes used, or it could just be calling someone one-on-one, I've oftentimes used our Teams directory and my Teams app on my mobile phone to call people more than I use a company directory for their direct dial, for example, or even having their cell phone programmed into my phone. One-to-many, that might be, maybe you're collaborating with a couple people, that's not necessarily a department or a team, if you will. fill, Teams team, for example, maybe some special project meetings. Of course, we all have to hold all company meetings. There's probably training sessions or meetings that you're doing, department weekly or monthly department meetings. And then there's external client or customer or vendor meetings that you may be going through. Virtual events or webinars like this session, for example. And there's been some talk and some questions around sharing and collaborating as a guest team, where you actually have a team in your Microsoft Teams tenant that it actually is shared to some external third party. We'll demonstrate that as well. So there's probably others, and if you have a question as it comes up as far as a different type of meeting that I haven't listed here or that we're not going to cover here momentarily, by all means, please put that in the Q&A and we'll make sure to address that at the end of the session. All right, with that said, now we're going to get into demonstrating 5 ways to hold team meetings. So I'm actually going to go through and I'm going to start with chat. So chat is the first method. Excuse me one second. I think I'm going to cough and I don't want you to do that in your ear. Sorry about that. I'm going to take a drink of water here. All right, sorry about that, everybody. Okay, I'm going to demonstrate a chat. Gosh, and as long as my throat clears. Sorry about that, right on camera. All right, so what I've done is we actually have the Teams session open here in the actual Teams application. Now, we're also hosting this meeting in Teams, so I'm actually not going to do the chat in this particular tenant, but what I've done is I've actually opened up Teams in the browser. And one of the things, a little tip I'd like to show you if you wanted to be able to do something similar, is if you're using the new Microsoft Edge browser, and you'll see that by this little icon down here. You'll be able to open up Teams either in the web browser like this. There's also another way that if you're in the Chromium browser, and I'll do this slowly, if you're in the Chromium browser, like so for instance, if you go to office.com, in the new Edge Chromium browser, you click on Teams. And so I've opened up Teams here, and then you can actually go to, there's a little ellipse or breadcrumbs in the upper right-hand corner here. If you click on that, scroll down to apps, and then you can actually say install apps in Microsoft Teams. So this is actually, I've actually pinned this app, or you can install this app as a browser. It's kind of a cool way. So now what it does, notice I've got 2 browsers here open. It gives me a browser window of Microsoft Teams. That's outside of my actual Microsoft Teams tenant. Now, I'm not trying to confuse you. I'm just trying to demonstrate how you can have potentially multiple Teams windows opened at the same time. So I'm actually in the browser now, in the app, the browser-based app. I'm going to click on Chat on the columns over here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to call Stephanie. So Stephanie, I gave her a little message earlier. Hey, Stephanie, I'm going to call you shortly. So I'm actually going to, in the chat, I'm going to actually go up here, and if I click on here, I can do a video call or an audio call. And so I'm not going to confuse the camera. I'm actually going to do an audio call, but I'm going to mute my phone. But the purpose of this is to show it's actually going to emulate similar to a phone call if you haven't already tried this. So I'm going to click on audio call. I'm going to mute my microphone so that we don't get some feedback through this session. Stephanie is receiving this on her side. She's going to answer. She's also going to mute her microphone as she sees this. And you'll see that that's just one example, and part of it's all right. So I'm going to hang up because Stephanie must not have been able to answer that. So I'll try that again, but that's one of the ways to call is just one-on-one. So it's Stephanie's in the chat. I can just go ahead and click call over here. The other thing that I wanted to illustrate is one-to-many. So I've got a mutual chat with Gerald and Stephanie over here. And so if I wanted to pick up the phone, let's say we were having a chat and I wanted to pick up the phone or call them both at the same time, I could do this on my mobile device or I could do this in my app. But notice I've got Gerald and Stephanie up here. If I just click call, it's actually going to call them both simultaneously. So I'm going to click call. I'm going to mute my microphone for the same reason. Hopefully Stephanie is able to pick this one up, catch it before it goes to voicemail. Again, the idea I want to show here is that Teams, when you make a call via chat, it is basically calling them and giving them the opportunity to answer or hang up, and we'll delineate this between, so Stephanie has answered. Notice you see down here that she's muted, so that we're not getting feedback through the session. But one of the things I'd like to illustrate is I'm going to actually open up the Teams browser here. Again, into the Teams browser, and I'm going to go to the chat, and I'm going to go to the Gerald and Stephanie chat. And notice I'm in the call, so I'm going to hover down here. Notice I'm in the call down here, okay? But I want to illustrate, so Gerald didn't answer the call. So let's say Gerald's in the middle of something or was just finishing up another call or in a meeting. But if Gerald were to navigate to our chat session, Gerald will be able to see, hey, I see that there's a call live and I can join that call. So that's one of the nice things about Teams. If you're using a one-to-many chat, you can actually call, and Stephanie was available, she answered. Gerald wasn't available, he didn't, but if he then becomes available, he could just navigate to our chat and actually join the call, either audio or video there. So that's one of the things I'd like to wanted to show about chat from a one-to-many perspective. So I'm going to go into here and I'm actually going to end the call. Thank you, Stephanie, for answering and illustrating that point. One of the things that I like about that is that it does, and notice the call is now no longer available. Gerald can call, but he wouldn't be able to join because the call has ended. That's one of the things I like to show as far as instead of if you're calling someone, let's say I was calling Stephanie and say, hey, Stephanie, hold on, let me bridge in Gerald. With Teams, you don't have to do that. It calls them both simultaneously. It'll call them on their the app if they have the app open on their laptop or desktop. It'll also call them on their mobile phone if they have the Teams app installed on their mobile phone. So you don't have to know if they're in front of their computer. You don't have to know if they're available on their phone. You can just call and it'll ping them, and it'll ping all people a part of the chat at the same time in any location, in any device that they've made themselves available, and they can choose to answer in any one of those devices. And if they miss the call, they can join later. So that's one of the ways I like to illustrate as far as one-to-many versus one-to-one in chat. The last thing that I'll illustrate, which is basically the same purpose, so I'm not going to show it again, but when you have, if you're in one-to-one, so Stephanie, it doesn't give me the chance of renaming this session because it's just my one-on-one chat with Stephanie. However, when I click on a multi-user, so I've got Gerald and Stephanie here, one of the things that gives me that I didn't see before is this name group chat. One of the reasons why I like this is because I could call this special project group. So now I'm able to rename the name of our chat some sort of special project. Because sometimes if you have a special project, so let's say Gerald and Stephanie and I are working on something that is only going to last a few weeks or maybe a couple months, I might be more inclined to create a special, like an ad hoc chat group like this versus creating an additional team structure that's really for across the entire organization. Team structures are designed to be a little bit more long-standing and functional groups that persist over time. Whereas this could be something that I start, and then if I wanted to, let's say that special project is done, I could just change that to say, Gerald and Stephanie chat. I could change that ad hoc as needed. No problem, but I like to be able to edit that. Again, if I'm holding those special meetings, not only could I hold meetings, but I could also just call them like I just illustrated a moment ago. So that's just the first few ways in which, if you're doing ad hoc calls, a quick one-on-one call, either via your mobile device or your app, as well as one-to-many, and what you can do there. So, okay, so that's really some of the core functionality and the reasons why you might use the chat function to create a meeting, share screen, etc. Again, one-to-one, one-to-many, or special projects. So now I'd like to move on to the channel. So notice when you're in a channel, and I'll illustrate, for instance, an all company meeting. I'm going to go to like the all in our demo tenant. We call it MTP 365. I'm going to go in the general channel. And when I create a meeting in the general channel, I'm actually not going to do this in the Teams. I'm in the Team app right now, so I'm going to switch over to the browser so that I don't conflict with this meeting. So I'm going to click over to the general channel. Notice when I create a meeting here, it doesn't actually, it won't call people like it did in the chat. So I'm going to click on Meet Now. Again, that's a little bit of a misnomer, so I'm going to choose that again. Really, in your channel, it's down here at the bottom. It's a little video camera icon. Again, it's a little bit confusing because when you're in a chat, to call, you go in the upper, you have the upper right-hand corner, and you don't have the option to do a call down here at the bottom. But when you're in a channel, the actual way to start a meeting is down here at the bottom. So it's a little camera icon. When you hover over it, it says Meet Now, but it actually doesn't require you to meet now. So I'm going to say all company meeting. I like to add that as a subject line for easy searchability. I'm going to choose to meet now, but I could also choose to schedule this meeting if I wanted to. So I don't have to meet now, but I could schedule it. For the sake of this illustration, I'm going to meet now. So I'm going to click Meet Now. And so turn off my microphone. So now it gives me, it's started this meeting in my all company general channel. And you'll see an illustration. When I go into the general channel, it shows me as a visual indicator that there is a meeting going on with this little camera icon up here. So if I wasn't, I'm going to just click on, say, the sales team, for example. Even with that, I see this visual indicator, and then when I click onto the general channel, I'm going to see this option, and for me to join this meeting, all I have to do is click join as an individual in your organization. This also works the exact same way on the mobile device. So if someone's connecting via their mobile, they'll see a little indicator at the top, basically at the top of their mobile phone, and they could click into Teams and hit join in the exact same way you see here. So that is, an all company meeting that you can share and across your entire organization. So I'm going to click end on that. I'm going to show you, I'm going to start another channel meeting, but I'm going to do it in a different place to illustrate the point. So I'm going to click end. I'm going to hang up the all company meeting. One of the things that is a nuance of hanging up an all company meeting is that you're not necessarily the organizer. Anyone who might have access to this, so that meeting would persist as long as anyone was connected to it. So if you had 50 people on your company joining or 10 people in your company joining and one person forgot to hang up, that's still going to show up there. So you'd be able to see who is still connected, and you could ask them to please hang up. So just as a little tidbit on that. So the other thing that you sometimes will see is training. So what if I wanted to, we have a training channel. We have that in a couple different areas in our organization, but for purposes of this demo tenant and illustrating this, what if you're holding a training session? Well, you can do the same thing. You can come in here, and by the way, you don't actually have to have people live join a training session for the training to hold a training session, because you can record it. So one of the things that I like to do is, so I'm in the training channel, and I'm going to go down here, just same thing I did previously, say meet now, except I'm going to say this is a 5 ways to hold Teams meetings training. So I'm going to do that and click meet now. So now I'm potentially holding this meeting, regardless of anyone joins. If you want to record this session, which we do when we're training internally, we nearly always record. You just go to the breadcrumbs here, and you can click on that, and you just hit start recording. So that's a simple way to be able to start the recording. I'll actually hit start recording for the purpose of the illustration, because it should show up here at the top, hey, you're recording, let everyone know that you're being recorded. So it's not just showing that to you, it'll show that to anyone who joins. So it's automatically showing that to them that it's being recorded. I'm going to hit dismiss on that. I could also invite other people externally here if I'd like to, internally or externally. Again, that has to be permissioned. By default, Teams does not allow you to invite people externally for a reason. Again, that's part of the security that we talked about at the beginning. But this is an illustration of it. You're doing the exact same thing as holding potentially an all company meeting, but you're choosing to hold it in a training channel, and then holding and then actually recording it. So I'm going to go and hit stop recording. The meeting is being recorded. Are you sure you want to stop? Yep, I want to stop recording. And then I'm going to hang up. And notice it's saying the recording is being saved. Once the recording is processed and saved, it will be added to the meeting chat. So that also will show up in the Teams channel. It says it here, recording is stopped, saving recording to Microsoft Stream. So the recording of that meeting or that training session will actually show up right here in the chat or in the channel for folks to reference at a later date. Because I'm sure all of you have, everyone in your organization always attends every training session or every company meeting that you want them to attend. And so you should never have to worry about this. Obviously that's just kidding, but this is a way where you can easily record things and share it with your team. Okay, the same thing applies to a department meeting. I would just say potentially go into the operations team general channel, and I could start a meeting here too. I'm not going to do it for the purposes because we've already shown how to do that twice, but you might choose to hold those meetings in different channels depending on the purpose of the meeting. And for instance, you might choose to record them or not, again, depending on the purpose of the session or the meeting. All right, so now we basically covered a lot of channel conversations about how to do that. So now I'm going to move on to what if I want to hold a meeting externally with an external client or vendor or partner. So one of the things that I will show is if you click down here on if you're in Outlook, go to your calendar view. And I'm showing my calendar view here. There's a couple things here at the top. I'm going to show you two ways to do it. It works the same way, but notice here at the top, it gives me the option to say new Teams meeting. So I'm just going to, with one click on new Teams meeting. It's going to pop up a calendar invite that I can then, of course, do anything I can normally do with a calendar invite, and it embeds a team meetings link and the dial-in information. Now, really quick, a public service announcement. The dial-in information is only available if the person creating the meeting, so me in this instance, is licensed with the E5 license or the enterprise, it's called E5. So it's Enterprise 5 license that allows you to embed and have a phone number. If you do not have that license, which most people listening in or watching the recording later will not have, you will have the same information, except this basically the dial-in information will not show up, but you'll just get a link for people to join. A common question that's asked about this is, does someone need to have a license to join the meeting, or does someone need to have a license or the Teams app installed to be able to join the meeting? The answer is no. They can just join via web browser. The only difference is if they're in via the web browser, they might not be able to share their screen unless they have the new Edge Chromium browser, by the way. They've got that feature built into that browser. So this is a way where you could choose to send, to just say external client, customer, and or vendor meeting, right? So you could send this and invite whomever you want. It could be internal or external to this meeting. And then notice at the top, when they open their browser, they could either click on this link right here, or when they open the invite, they could either click on this link right here, or they could at the top say click on join Teams meeting, and it'll pop up the Teams meeting. So I'm going to close that. The other way, so let's say for instance, maybe you already have a team meeting. So I'm going to do a new new meeting, and I'm going to schedule that for tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Let's at 8 to 9, and I'm going to say Stephanie's required here, and this is a team meeting. I'm just going to put that. All right, so I'm going to send that, and it's going to say send without a location. Yep, I'm going to send anyway. So my point is, let's say you have an existing meeting. So this one right here, I've got an existing meeting, and I want to make it a Teams meeting, or I want to invite somebody externally. Well, you can do that. You can just add them here, but then if you notice right at the top, it still gives you the option to create Teams meeting. So if you already have an existing meeting, or if you've already opened up the calendar window, you can hit Teams meeting. It populates the information right here. You can add external people. So I'll add Gerald or myself, and then I'll add Gerald, who I'll add him from his Mytech account. So just to show that this is an external meeting, and then I'll click send update, and it'll automatically send the update to those folks. So I took an existing meeting that you may have had and made it a Teams meeting, and we're able to share externally. Again, when you click that browser, that calendar invite, now I could just say join Teams meeting right here, and that's what your invitees will see as well. So all right, so we've now illustrated basically how we can use a calendar invite to invite external clients, customers, or vendors. And I'm trying to log into my notes over here. And by just using a calendar invite, they do not need a license. They do not need the Teams application, and to be able to access this information. Okay, getting logged in. So that's really the key around Outlook. Again, where you can either create a meeting. And again, if I've got this selected, it also shows me join Teams meeting here at the top. If I've selected this meeting, it is a Teams meeting. I don't even have to open it. I can just hit join Teams meeting right here at the top of my Outlook calendar. So it's just, I really appreciate some of the simplicity that they built into being able to invite people via Outlook calendar invites as well. I have had a lot of folks internally use this functionality where they're using the calendar invite to invite internal people. You can do that. That's perfectly fine. It's just that there are other ways that are available to be able to invite internal folks, like via chat or just via Teams channel. So that's one of the reasons why I mainly use that Outlook method for external access. All right, so the other way that I'd like to show is what if you have a guest team? So so we've created a special team down here that actually has, and I'll show you the members of the team. I'll manage the team, and I'll show you the members of the team are actually, we've got basically Gerald and myself and Stephanie. We've got our internal demo tenant at the 365, but then we've invited ourselves in the mytech.com tenant. So notice it's our mytech.com addresses, not our MTP 365 addresses. So we've actually created this shared tenant we've shared externally. Now there's an administrative function, by the way, that needs to be that has to be allowed to share access and before you can share externally. So that might be something where you might need your internal IT, if you have one, or someone like ourselves. We can help you with that by allowing that access. And then you could just do the same thing by creating a meeting just like you did here. Now, the thing that is different, that's important to share relative to if you have invited, so for instance, the Tech Pulse event that has now been canceled for this year, unfortunately, we had Mytech used a guest team to collaborate with our partner on the event. So we actually used Teams and used a guest team to do just this because we invited their collaborators to join, and we hosted our Teams meetings this way. We also shared files this way as well. The trick is, though, that I'm logged into the demo tenant. This is Microsoft's Contoso name. But if I'm the guest invitee, so if I'm the people to whom I've invited to join this, what they see is, notice, they'll see something like this. They'll see, they'll have to click this little button up here. Now you won't see this if you try and if you're trying to do this on your Teams right now. You will not see this unless you have been invited as a guest to a separate tenant. So if you do not see a little drop down next to your initials up here, you have not been invited to a guest tenant, so you don't have to worry about this. But if you have been invited, what your guest will see, if they're using Teams, is they will have to then go out of their guest, their current tenant, which is their company domain tenant, and they will have to basically click on and effectively log into the guest tenant. And when they click on that into the guest tenant, what they will see, and I'll do this in the browser for the sake of, so I don't disrupt this meeting. In the browser, I'm going to click on Mytech Partners guest. I hope this works. It doesn't break anything because I'm doing it in the browser. It's now basically logging me out of the Contoso guest, and it basically is now showing me only the demo guest. So, and if I want to click back in, I have to click back into Contoso to go back to my company. So, and that's also another reason why I would say if you're going to do this, just open it up in the browser so that way you could be logged into your tenant, and if you need to log into a guest tenant, you can click on the browser and do it that way. So that's one of the things we like to show relative to if you're using a guest tenant, as far as being able to invite third parties. But it's important to note that this little drop down up here is what your guests will see. In order for them to be able to join, they're going to have to make this switch happen. All right. Notice it happens relatively quickly, but you're basically logging out of yours and into the guest tenant in order for the security to be maintained, and that's part of the reason why they do that. Okay, so we've now hit on 4 of the 5, and I'm running just real short here, but I'm going to click on the last thing. If you click on the calendar over here on the side, one of the options you have under here on a new meeting, don't click new meeting, you click the drop down to the side, and you have the option called live event. It's effectively what we're doing here, and I'll actually show you what I probably did wrong that prevented you from being able to all join at the beginning of this session. So I'm going to hit live event. And so what that is going to do is I'm going to say demo live event. All right, and I'm going to schedule that for tomorrow at 2 to 2:30. And it gives me the option, I can put a description down here. So this is to demonstrate how to set up a live event. And by default, I'm the producer. So I'm actually invite Stephanie. And I actually want to make her the producer, like this session, and I'm actually the presenter. So I choose those drop downs differently because it gives us different views when we actually log in. And if I needed a guest, I could invite external folks, like I've invited Gerald, like the open forum that we have tomorrow, for example. Gerald is also invited. I've added him as a session. I've also been able to invite external folks. So in fact, we're doing a panel next week. And Jan Lehman, who's a productivity consultant, is also. So I could enter her email address, at CTC Productivity. Once I've filled that in, it'll say, "Hey, do I want to invite Jan?" And I could choose to invite Jan. So I'm not going to do that for the sake, but I wanted to illustrate that you can invite internal or external folks. So now I'm gonna say go to the next screen, and it's going to give me some options. You also have to permission. If you want to allow live events to be held externally, you need to permission it, because if by default, you'll just basically only be able to do these two internally, basically. You only be able to do internals. So what I probably did when I created the event, I probably didn't switch this from org-wide, which requires a sign-in, which is why folks couldn't join the beginning. I probably didn't switch this to public when I created this event, so shame on me. But you click public if you want to make it public, or you could just do it internally. And then here are your options. One of the things I like to note is that the Q&A panel that you see on the side of your screen by default is turned off. So if in your live event you want the Q&A panel, you got to check that. Okay, and then I also turned off captions for illustration, just mainly for bandwidth. I wanted to make sure that we didn't have any issues with that, and I want to make the recording available, and so it automatically does that. So these are just some of the options you want to check as far as, do you want them, what settings do you want here, and then how do you want to produce the event? Like I said, I want the Q&A. You can also put a URL here if you have a particular URL that you'd like to provide to the individuals for if they have two attendees. So I'm going to click schedule. And now that I've scheduled this event, it basically gives me an option to get the link to which I can send to attendees for all of you. And then if we're ready to host this event, we can actually hit join, and it allows us to join the meeting. So Stephanie and I can join, and we have the presenter or the producer view respectively. And then once the event is done, you'll actually see information here. So I'll actually show you what that looks like, because I'll go back to one of our previous events, the event that we held on Tuesday. I'll click into here. Once I clicked into there, it actually says, here's the recording, here's the Q&A report, the attendee engagement report. These are things that we can then download, which is what we've done to make the recordings available to you after the fact. So this is this is one of the ways that is a relatively new feature of Teams. And as an example, you have to set those settings right to get them started. Otherwise, it doesn't allow people to join. So that's the quick demonstration overview of that. So the summary here is that the 5 ways: chat is great for one-on-one or one-to-many, or some of the special projects that we mentioned. Channel is good for all company or department meetings or training meetings. Outlook invites are good for external client, customer, or vendor meetings. And the guest channel is for guest team collaboration, if you have a little bit deeper collaboration than just maybe emailing, sharing documents back and forth. And then the live event, where you can host virtual meetings or webinars. So those are the 5 ways to hold meetings in Microsoft Teams for the different purposes. We hope those help you choose the right purpose for your meeting. So again, I recommend being clear about what you're trying to accomplish. If there's anything that you learned from today, write those things down now so that you can take away and make sure you don't forget about. Try some of these methods with your teammates in the next couple days. Try and learn how to interact with these different ways of scheduling and creating meetings and connecting with folks. And then join us tomorrow for our open forum, as well as we have sessions every Tuesday and Thursday and Friday through the end of the month. With that said, I'm a couple minutes over, so sorry about that, but hopefully we provided a lot of content and a lot of understanding about how to run these meetings. For those of you who want to drop off, thank you very much for sticking around with us longer than we intended. So stay safe and stay healthy.